Hey, I'm Coach Marcus at Pink Sock Endurance Coaching. Welcome to my channel.
Hey, so I thought I'd put together a little video on the different running paces, because just recently I've seen on social media so many people posting and asking questions about what is my easy pace, what's my steady pace, how do I get faster, how fast should I run my speed work. And there's so much information that I can see why so many people are getting confused and potentially running the wrong paces, which is why more often than not you see those same people not getting any improvement. So, you know, they're putting in a lot of work and effort, they are being consistent, but just not necessarily seeing much improvement. So I thought I'd put this together just to try and briefly explain the different paces, the different zones, the rate of perceived exertion for each of those paces, and rough heart rate guidelines that should be roughly, give or take, for that given intensity. So let's jump straight in and just talk through those different paces. So our easy pace range. So this includes recovery as well. So our easy pace range. Well, what we'll do, actually, before we get into these paces, you need to know what paces you should be running at. So how do you know what your threshold pace is? How do you know what your easy pace range is? Well, the easiest way to work this out is to have a recent race time. And when I say recent, within the last 4 weeks. So you want to have done a race. It doesn't need to be official. You can get out and do it yourself. So a 5K, 10K, half marathon. If you've got that race result, you can use that to gauge your paces. Now, if you haven't got a race result from the last 4 weeks, then I highly recommend you go out and do a race so you can set your zones correctly. Now, the best, in my opinion, is to go out and race a 5K effort. Now, obviously, I'm not asking you, if you're just on week 2 of Couch to 5K, to go and run a 5K. So ideally, to be able to set these paces accurately, you already need to have been running realistically 3 to 6 months, and you already need to be able to go out and run or race a 5K. So obviously don't go out and do that if you're currently not able to, because you just end up injured. So if you want to go out and run that 5K just to get that baseline, and if you are going to go and do that, just have a look on my pre-course how to run a faster 5K in 12 weeks video, because that will just detail about doing a proper warm-up and some drills before you go out and race that 5K. So that's what you really need. Once you've got that, you can then download an app or view on the website, and I'll put a link in the description below. And you basically want to download the VDOT running app. Once you've got that, you can put your race time and your race distance into the data fields, and then that'll calculate the average pace that you ran for that effort. And then if you click on the training tab, that will break down all of the paces that you should be able to run at your current fitness. Now, again, with all these paces, they're going to be based on your current fitness. So this isn't a set them once and forget it. This is a set them now, do a block of training. So that could be 8 weeks, 12-week block of training, where you'll obviously see improvement, and you then obviously want to do another test event, because if you're getting faster, you want to reset those zones, because as you get faster, your zones obviously will change, or the paces that you'll run for each zone will change. So it's important, once you've set them up, to check on them probably every 8 to 12 weeks. And you should just constantly, every 8 to 12 weeks, see some improvement, if you're obviously doing regular structured training. So that's how you find out the different paces. But what are these paces and what do they mean? So if we jump back in, so our easy pace range, also dumping recovery pace. So our easy pace range, this is the pace that we should be running for about 80% of our run time. So 80% of our total run time per week should fall into this easy pace range. This is the pace where you're building strength and endurance. You're improving strength in the heart, so the heart's getting stronger. You're building endurance. You're gaining important time on your feet. And because it's at a lower intensity, you don't accumulate too much unnecessary fatigue. So that's the easy and recovery pace range. Now, this is probably around about 2, even 3 minutes per mile slower than your 5K race pace. Rate of perceived exertion for this is somewhere between 5 and 6 out of 10 effort. So it's a pace at which you could run and hold a full conversation, pretty much what I'm doing today in this video on my long easy run. So able to hold pretty much a full conversation without over shortness of breath. And to be fair, I'm probably struggling a little bit and could slow down a little bit myself. So nice and easy, conversational pace, 5 to 6 out of 10 rate of perceived exertion. Round about 65 to 75% of your maximum heart rate. So that's the easy pace and the recovery pace. There's obviously a range to it. Like I said, between 2 and 3 minutes per mile slower than your 5K race pace. So if you're going to go out and do a 40-minute recovery run the day after your longest run of the week, then I would say, because it's recovery, you'll go to the slower end of that range. So about 2.5, 3 minutes per mile slower than your 5K race pace. So that's pretty much zone 1 and 2, recovery, easy pace range. And that's that one covered. The next range is marathon pace. Now, marathon pace is probably somewhere around about 7-ish, 7.5 out of 10 effort. And again, look in the VDOT app, because that will give you your marathon pace range, but somewhere around about 7.5 out of 10 effort. This has probably fallen into the zone 3 category, and it's about somewhere around 75 to 85% of your heart rate max. Now, realistically, if you're training for a marathon, you'll obviously be doing marathon paced sessions. If you're not, then there's really no need, in my opinion, to run in zone 3. So unless you're training for a marathon, I'd avoid this zone. Now, the reason for avoiding it is zone 3 stuff, or what I see so many friends call their steady run. So steady is a bad word in my opinion, because you tend to find if people are running in zone 3, this steady zone, it's too fast to be an easy run, but it's not fast enough to gain you the advantages of running at threshold pace. So what this does is it increases the amount of fatigue that you're carrying. So as you go into your next run session, you'll be carrying slightly more fatigue, which basically means that that next session that you do, you won't get as much quality out of it. So unless you're training for a marathon, realistically avoid zone 3 marathon pace, also known as steady. So the next zone, zone 4, is our threshold pace. Now, this is sometimes referred to as tempo, and for the purpose of this video, they'll be interchangeable. So threshold is tempo pace, and also known as lactate threshold. So zone 4. So our threshold pace is known as being a pace you could sustain in a race when fit to do so for about an hour. So you can clearly see that this threshold pace is going to change massively depending on the person running. So for somebody who currently runs a 10k in about an hour, that will be your threshold pace. But you could see someone who runs a 10k in 30 minutes. So that 10k is going to be considerably faster than their threshold pace. So that's obviously going to vary drastically from person to person. Now, threshold pace is around about 8 out of 10 rate of perceived exertion. So this is a pace that is comfortably hard. So you definitely know you're doing these sessions, but you can do surprising volume. So heart rate for threshold work, again, this does vary from person to person. So obviously a well-trained elite athlete will be able to deal with the build-up of lactate a lot better than a beginner. So again, for the purpose of this video, as a rough guideline, your threshold or your lactate threshold zone 4, is about 88 to 92% of your heart rate max. So that'll give you a rough guideline. Now, how do you know when you're running at this pace, or more importantly, how do you know when you're running too hard? Well, lactate in the blood, you can taste it. So as the body is unable to remove that lactate and it slowly starts to build up, you will start to taste almost like a blood-like, metallic-like taste in your mouth, and that is just the build-up of the lactate. So when you taste that, you're working, or have been working, for several minutes above your lactate threshold. So if you're out on a threshold run and you start to taste that, then you're working too hard. So just keep an eye out on that, and that's the threshold pace. So the kind of workouts that you could do at threshold pace could be something like 3 times 8 minutes with 2-minute walking recoveries, and you could build that up over a 3-month period. So you might do 1 month, you might do 3 weeks of 3 times 8 minutes with a 2-minute walking recovery. The following month you could add that or increase to 3 times 10 minutes, and then in month 3 you could increase further to 3 times 12 minutes, but maintain those 2-minute recoveries. Or another way of doing it, which is how I've been doing it in my 12-week How to Run a Faster 5K course, is keeping the duration, so 3 times 8 minutes with 2-minute recovery, and then in month 2 still 3 times 8 minutes, but reduce the recovery to 90 seconds, and then in month 3 reduce that recovery just to 60 seconds. So that's a couple of examples of threshold workouts, and like I said, obviously doing 3 times 12 minutes, that's 36 minutes of threshold work in a session. You know, it's going to take time to build up to that, but with patience and consistency, it's definitely achievable. You know, if you're marathon training, you might even end up doing like 3 times 3 miles at just slightly slower than threshold pace. So that's threshold. The next is our interval pace. So what is interval pace? How do we run it? What sort of sessions? The effort level, heart rate, and so on and so forth. Well, interval pace. So this is harder than threshold in terms of it's probably zone 5. In terms of rate of perceived exertion, we're probably looking at about a 9 out of 10. And heart rate wise, we probably can't really use it because the interval sessions that we do are really short. So 2-3 minutes, maybe 4-minute intervals, which doesn't really give the heart long enough to reach its maximum. So you can't really use heart rate because you'll almost have finished the session by the time your heart rate peaks, at which point you've been looking at your watch and not concentrating on your running. So for intervals, use the pace guideline in the VDOT app and rate of perceived exertion. So these should feel about a 9 out of 10 effort, and these are about building speed and strength. So sample interval sessions. So I've currently been doing a 6 times or an 8 times 500 meter interval pace with 2-minute recoveries, but you could do 5 or 6 times kilometer repeats with 2-minute recoveries. And the same principle again with the threshold. You could, in month 1, run 3 weeks where you do 5 or 6 kilometers at your interval pace with a 2-minute recovery. And in month 2, you repeat the session, but you reduce the recoveries to 90 seconds. And then in month 3, reduce those recoveries down to a minute. So at the end of those 3 months, if you're running that interval session and you're able to do 6 kilometer efforts with only a minute recovery, realistically, if you then went out and raced 5 kilometers, you should be able to race at that interval pace for the entire 5K. So that's a really good session to see where your fitness is at and what you'd be capable of running in a 5K. So that's the interval pace. The next is our rep pace. So again, rep is faster than intervals. Again, can't really go by heart rate because the reps are so short, and rate of perceived exertion is also a tricky one because you can use it, and these are probably about a 9.5 out of 10 effort, but because they're so short, they're almost over before they start to be uncomfortable. So rep pace, again, look on the VDOT app. You can see the kind of target pace that you should be able to achieve, and an example or a couple of examples for reps. Really, 200 meter or even 100 meter reps, 100 meter reps, 200 meter reps. If you're highly trained, you might even be doing 400 meter reps because they might only be taking like 70 seconds. So for reps, ideally keep these no more than 2 minutes. And for the beginners or people who are sort of, just average runners, for your reps, I'd probably keep them to a maximum of a minute. And the important thing with reps is you want to be able to run these reps. So we're going to say we're going to run 10 times 1 minute at our rep pace. Now these are hard, and you want to concentrate on your running form. So you want to make sure that every single 1 minute rep is of high quality. So you need to make sure you're completely recovered before you start the next rep. So what does that mean? Well, you might only be running for a minute, but how much recovery do you need? Well, take as much as you need to ensure that each rep is the same quality, so the same pace. If that means that you need 3 minutes between each of those 1 minutes, then take 3 minutes. If you're relatively new to this type of work, you might need even longer, but don't feel, I guess, embarrassed that you're only running for 1 minute and taking 4 minutes recovery, because it's completely fine. The quality comes from those 1 minute efforts or those 1 minute reps and maintaining good form and pace. So that is the rep. And I guess the final pace, which isn't on the VDOT app, is probably form sprints or strides. So form sprints and strides are basically faster than rep pace, but they're so short that you're only probably doing these for a maximum of 30 seconds. And what you'll do is you'll start off at an easy-ish pace for about 8 to 10 seconds, and then you'll change your upper gear for about 6 to 8 seconds. Then you'll run another gear, so you'll pick the pace up again to your third fastest gear for about 4 to 6 seconds, and then gear 4 for the last 4 seconds, 3-4 seconds, you'll be running a pretty much 10 out of 10 effort. So that's form sprints or strides, and it's just basically enabling you to feel what it's like to run at a lot faster pace. So hopefully in the future, this pace might be your rep pace. It could even be your interval pace. So it's important to run at these faster paces and run them with good technique and form, because eventually, as you progress and you'll be running regularly at these paces, you'll know what it feels like. So that is it. That is, from what I can think of, off the top of my head whilst out on my Sunday long run. They're all the different paces that I can think of. They are the different heart rate zones that you can run at, the rate of perceived exertion for each of those different levels, and some sample sessions that you might be able to fit into those workouts. So hopefully that's explained it. Like I said, it really is important to gauge on your current fitness. So you really do need to do some kind of event or your own standalone effort, just so you can put that information into the VDOT app, and that will give you obviously your training paces for your current fitness. So hopefully that's helped. If you've got any questions, any comments, or you think I might have got a bit of this wrong, because like I said, I've just taken this all from my head, so I think I got it right. But yeah, drop us a comment below. If you found it useful, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and thanks for watching. Happy running, and catch you next time. Take care. Thank you.